Hello, my dear friends. How are you? I hope that you are doing superbly well. Yes, I have essential oils on my forehead, so if it's shiny, that's why. Anyway, okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys about so many exciting things, and I just wanted to shout out to Bernadine. I think that's how you pronounce it, Bernadine. And she sent me the most beautiful, darling, sweet little sentiments of a care package. And it was all of things pertaining to tea. She made me a clipboard that I can use for my art that has decoupage, decoupage of Tasha Tudor, all of Tasha Tudor's art on it. And I was just nearly teary-eyed. Seeds, tea, a little teacup, which I loved because on the bottom of it, it said June. And that was my dear Sawyer's birthday month. And it was also the month that he passed. But, I want to think of it in a positive way. But anyway, so all of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. Okay, so in the little post that I noted on Facebook and on Instagram, I was saying that I wanted to talk a little bit about old-fashioned lifestyle. And I think that I covered a lot of that in my couple of posts back on my blog. And so I might preface a little bit more of that in regards to kind of going through that, but that's going to have to be a whole nother video because it's so long, because I wanted to do like pinpoints, many of the different things about living an old-fashioned lifestyle. And so, like you guys know, I have always told you that, no, it's not about me going back in time and pretending like I'm not like Sarah from Christman that's, she actually lives in an old-fashioned home and she only wears, a corset and the old-fashioned Victorian clothes and everything like that, which I think I probably am not so authentically correct in my dress and stuff, but it's a mindset, and I think I've kind of described that to you guys before. I'm thinking of some different things to do for my YouTube channel. Like I would love to have like an intro, that would be really cool. Almost like a Downton Abbey intro. You know how like it's like the little feather duster on the chandelier and the little bellboard rings and such. And wouldn't that be such a fun little opening to all of my YouTube videos? I just think that would be like super cool. Now I haven't done that yet, but I've been thinking and mulling it over, about trying to think of ideas and stuff. But obviously it would be one of like me pouring tea and all of the things that I love, so anyway, that's exciting. So some of the things that I wanted to talk to you about were and I think what I'm going to also do is take you guys along with me and Jeffrey when we go to start finding and seeking property for our new homestead. And so let me go back first. Okay, so what happened was, after my son passed, and I talked to you guys about this, about how I was really pushing against and resisting so many things in my life. Even after my son passed, I was almost like, I don't know if it was shock or what it was, but it was almost like I was fighting against, even still, like having resistance in my life, as far as like I even went so far as to almost file a civil lawsuit against the company that repossessed my son's truck. Unlawfully they did it, but I figured, I'm just going to, I made peace with it, and I also made peace with my son because it was more of a sentimental thing than it was anything of material possession. It's just too convoluted to go into detail because it'll bring up negative energy for me, and I just really, it's not like I'm avoiding it or trying to ignore it. Actually, I am actually trying to ignore it because I don't want to have resistance in my life, because things, even though my son passed, I know that I feel clearly and spiritually that God source, my son Sawyer, is really opening doors for us. I feel like after I finally let go of that whole I hope this is recording. Anyway, after I let go and made peace with it, because I started noticing that everything that I was doing, which was pertaining to my son, like his estate and having to file an estate and do all that kind of stuff, I really started to feel tons of resistance. And I'm like, why am I feeling such resistance when I do have so many things that are wonderful happening in my life, right? And so I had been meditating and stuff, and I kind of was lackadaisical a little bit on a couple of days, and it could have been even a week that I had went by, because I was just so felt like, have you ever had that where you wake up and you're like, I have so much to do, I'm so stressed, oh my gosh, I have to take care of this, that kind of stuff. I know is that a little bit early, for me to be so loud, but no, anyway. And so and like I said, I always have to preface that if you hear that pecking, it's the chickens on the back glass door. They see me, my reflection, and they're like, oh, I want worms, but anyway. So yeah, has that ever happened to you where you just start to realize, you get on this momentum and the stress just starts to come? It's like the universe is just like, okay, well, whether we want something in life or not, we're going to get what we think about. And so if you're on this momentum of thinking everything sucks in my life and I hate my life and this is horrible and this is horrible, it's like what I always tried to remember to tell myself when this was happening is every time I've ever told you particular, dear friends, that's thunder, wow. Anytime I've ever told you, dear friends, what to do is if you have 10 crapola things happening. I mean, that's a lot, but I'm saying that's the extremity of it, right? So if you have 10 sucky things in your life and you only have one really, really super good thing, and that's being optimistic, that's even being a little bit pessimistic, that you can always try to keep your momentum focused on that one positive thing. And when you do that and you learn to control your thoughts about what you think about every day, every moment, because a lot of times I think we don't realize that when we're going through life experiences, or everything is so habitual every day you wake up, you don't realize that you wake up and once you hit the ground running, that it's habitual, that you've thought about the things that you thought about the day before. And it's just until you are able to very directly control your thought processes. And once you get good at doing that, you will notice that the less you'll focus on the negative things and the more you'll focus on the positive things. And I think the other thing, I know that when I was a religious person, right? You guys know that I've been in 2 religions, both equally half my life, right? So I was Pentecostal Church of God until I was 17 years old. And then my mom allowed me before my 18th birthday, because she had this rule, okay, if you're going to make decisions like this, if you want to join the Mormon church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, then you have to be able to be 18 so that you can make your own choice, because I really don't want you joining that church until you're, of legal age, just because she felt like there was so many reasons, that we've now talked about in the, from the past. Anyway, the whole point is that she didn't want me to join the church until I was 18. So she had this rule. Anyway, so I was Pentecostal Church of God. I mean, really, really strict. And so if you guys know anything about that, you know that it's I was in 2 of the most strictest religions, probably besides being a Muslim. Muslin is that fabric that you sew crafty things with. Anyway, but anyway, the whole point is that those 2 religions are I think, in my opinion, the most strict, if you want to use that word. I don't know. Point. Okay, so I was getting to a point about thinking. Oh, okay, this is what it was. So the thing about training your thought process, right, is that you want to be able to train your thoughts to think positive. And let me give you a little example of how much universal laws and the law of attraction is based on it's sort of based on a universal laws, but it's very spiritual in the sense that, say for instance, you grew up like me, you grew up in a religion that was like, oh, well, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't look at too much internet and you shouldn't watch too much TV because it's going to make your spirit terrible, right? Or I don't know if that's the way that you should say it, but like religious folks look at it like you need to restrict yourself from these things because God doesn't want you to, take in negative things, or God doesn't want you to like pollute your spirit, right? Okay, so this is how religious people look at it. Well, now, law of attraction looks at it more of you have control of your reality, right? So whereas a lot of times religions will put the responsibility onto God or Jesus, right? Because they'll say, no, I'm not allowed to do that because God doesn't want me to. Do you see what I'm saying? With the paradox of that is, I don't know if paradox would be the word, but the way that religious people look at it is like that we don't have control of our lives. God has control, or Jesus has control of our lives. And so we are therefore submissive to God, right? Whereas universal laws and the law of attraction brings back the power within us because we are all God-like, whereas we hold the Spirit of God in us, right? So it's not like people that are spiritual don't believe in God. If anything, we believe more in God than probably the average religious person because we're so like always in unison of wanting to be in alignment, which actually equals to, in alignment means having the Spirit with you. Do you know what I mean? Like religious people will say, oh, he's backslid, or oh, they're inactive, or oh, their spirit's been dulled, their spirit's been deadened, that kind of thing. Like those are the kind of things that religious people would say, whereas the spiritual people would say, no, it's just that you're out of alignment, which means that you're not in alignment with what God, source, the universe, God, really is trying to teach us in regards to our spirit, what we feel, our emotions. And so the thing that I love so much about the law of attraction is that it gives the person, it gives me, and it gives you the power to feel that you have control over your life. That God isn't sitting up there dangling this thing and saying, well, when you're worthy enough, Raquel, then I'll give you what you want. I mean, and here's the reality of it. If you think about, let me give you an example of how this is come to fruition, okay? Have you ever noticed, or have you ever thought in your life, well, because I used to think this, so I'm going to use my own personal experience for this, is because when I was in both of my religions, right? And I don't want you to think that I'm so anti-religion. Like, they served me absolutely well. There's beautiful, beautiful people aligned and well-intentioned in religions, in all religions. I have no qualm about that whatsoever. It's just, for me, it doesn't serve me anymore in my life. Living the law of attraction serves me, And so, but I still am very much spiritual, very much God-like, and believe in that, if you want to use God, source, the universe, higher consciousness, But anyway, so back to my example. So have you ever noticed, and this is like the whole like direct opposite of you being in control of your life, and in comparison to how a lot of times people spiritually in religion, folks that are in religion, direct all of the responsibility onto God. And so understandably so, when that's what you've been taught or raised to believe, and you have this belief system that you're not in control of your life, it does, in a sense, it accommodates you because it makes you feel like, well, there's a reason why I can't have that or be that or manifest that or live in that place or have this or that or whatever. Because if you can do that and and give somebody else the responsibility of saying, I'm not worthy enough, then it feels a lot better than looking at yourself and going, well, the only really reason that I don't have that is because I have to look inside myself and go, maybe I don't believe in myself enough, or maybe I just want to use somebody else as my reason for why I haven't accomplished what I have in life. So it does serve us. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick example. I think my dear beloved gardener is going to the gym or whatever, so I have to run him out a sweat towel. But anyway, I wanted to keep this thought in mind. So what I was saying is that here is my example. And it really was one of the things that solidified for me, wow, I am in control of my life, because now it makes sense why this occurs, and which I didn't understand before with the law of attraction. And that is, have you, or I will give an example of myself, but I'm thinking that if you're similar to me, maybe in some instance you might recognize this. So I would go along in life and, in the beginning, and especially when I was first married and stuff like that, I would think to myself, like, let me give you an example about money, okay? Because that was always the struggle for me. And so I would go about life, and I would notice that, like, we paid our tithing, we gave a fast offering, we're very consistent and religious about that. And I would also notice that we were I felt like I was following all the commandments. I was doing everything religiously correct and spiritually right. And I was trying to raise my kids in the gospel and raise my kids in church and do all of the things, basically following the rules or the commandments, And I didn't understand. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, because why is so-and-so that's like, say, XYZ over here, Mr. So-and-so, doesn't even go to church not one time in his life, cusses like a sailor, cheats on his wife, does dirty dealings in business, and he's driving around in a freaking BMW. His wife's got a Escalade. They live in the biggest mansion in town. They've got everything. It appeared to me, because I'm looking at the external part of it, like, and they're not following any of the rules, and they're getting all the rewards, and they're rich. And it just used to like drive me insane, because I couldn't figure it out. Because I was like, why are they getting everything and they're following none of the rules? And I'm following all the rules and the commandments, and I'm not getting squat. We're in debt, we're paying our tithing. God knows we're paying our tithing and our fast offering. Oh, you need to go to the temple more. Oh, you need to make sure you're praying more. Oh, it's because of family home evening. And then when you start doing that, or you start doing more of that, oh, well, okay, maybe I need to pray more. Or maybe I need to, give up something else. Or maybe I need to, it's just because I'm terrible in this area, and that's why God's not allowing me to have this, because I don't deserve it in a sense, or whatever. Anyway, so what I realized is that after following the law of attraction and learning about universal laws and how everything is a reflection of our energetic vibration, everything we think about, how we've always thought, if you grew up in religion, that it's like God, spirit is always near you, and if you're aligned with spirit, then you will hear, manifestations, basically prayers being answered and things of that nature. And so what I started to notice was, after I started learning and practicing the teachings of Abraham and the law of attraction, I started to understand why Mr. XYZ over here was getting all the wealth that he wanted and whatever, and wasn't following the rules. It wasn't because then what you hear in religion, and this is what I always heard, is that, well, you're not going to get your kingdom on earth, but because you were a good person, you're going to get it in heaven. So therefore, we've got to wait. It's almost like we're plagued and we can never have the joy that we really want, or the things that we want to manifest, or the desires of our hearts, where it says that in the Bibles and the Book of Mormons, it says you'll get the desires of your heart. All you have to do is ask and believe, right? The faith of a mustard seed. And so these things all contradicted each other. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense then, because I'm having faith of a mustard seed. I've got faith and it still ain't freaking working. You know what I mean? Like, I get wound up about it like on a soapbox, because it just, once you realize how things really are compared to how you grew up and were raised, it's like a freaking light bulb goes off in your brain and you're like, oh my God, the whole world makes sense now. Like, everything starts to fall in like a domino effect, and you start to recognize that's why that never made sense to me. That's why I'd pray and God, please answer my prayer. And never, it felt like it was hitting the ceiling and bouncing off every time. Have you ever felt like that? Like, okay, well, I keep praying and my prayers are intentional and they're good, and I'm coming with an open heart and a open vessel of, letting God work in my life. But once again, what we do is we think that we have to be to a certain standard in religion. This is how we believe. This is how I grew up. You have to be to a certain standard in order for God to bless you. And he blesses some more than others. Like, you'll look at some people in the priesthood, or some people in your Church of God or whatever, and you're like, oh, well, Pastor so-and-so, that's why he's got the wealth, because he's one of God's children. It's like, no, well, we're all God's children, and we know that. But somehow we dumb ourselves down, or make ourselves tell ourselves, because of people training us when we were younger, like maybe our mama did it and our grandma did it to our mama, and or however it comes into our belief system, is that it's a product of our environment. We are a product of our environment. You can't get away from it. You might want to try all freaking day long, but the fact of the matter is that there is a clear indication of why we have the beliefs that we do. If you would just stand back and look, or evaluate your own life. I mean, that's what I did. And so I felt like now I understand living the law of attraction, of why, like I was saying, Mr. XYZ is got all this wealth or whatever. What it is, you guys, is it's not because God doesn't think I'm not worthy. It's because I think I'm not worthy. It has nothing to do with putting the responsibility on God. God's sitting there going, anything you ask for, you've got it. But you better line your ass up. I mean, obviously he doesn't say it like this, but I'm saying it because that's how I speak to you guys, is that it's your job, it's my job to line your freaking energy up. It's your job to align yourself with the belief that you deserve anything you want in life. Anything that you desire, you have the capacity to manifest it. The only reason you're not manifesting it is because you have a belief system that totally kicks that out. And it's because of how we were raised. But it doesn't have to be the end all to be it all. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, well, I was born that way and raised that way, and I've been that way 72 years, and so I ain't changing now. Well, if you keep telling yourself that and you're 72 years old, then keep living like that, because it won't change. You've got that momentum going. You've had it for 72 freaking years that you've driven home on. Oh, I'm never going to have this because I'll have to wait for my crown of glory in heaven. I know I always sound like, I don't know why I do that, but just put a twang to it. But anyway, my whole point is that XYZ over here is on the vibrational, energetic flow of believing that he deserves the big house, the this, the that, or whatever. And that's really none of our business, to be quite frank. It's none of your business what even your spouse is doing, what your children are doing, what they're desiring in their lives, what they want to manifest. It has nothing to do with that. But the thing that I wanted you to understand is that you can pick apart any certain sort of thing, right? You can pick apart any particular desire that you have. And you can say, okay, well, so-and-so, like say for instance me, so-and-so has had 2 book deals, and she's 2 times New York Times bestseller. Now, I can choose to look at that person and say, I desire that as well, right? However, she has it already and baby don't. Baby ain't got that yet, right? Baby ain't even got a book deal, let alone a New York Times bestseller, right? But that doesn't mean that because I'm not where she is, and that means she's a better person, or oh, she's a better manifester, or she's a better Christian because God's going to reward her more. That's not the case. It's always the case of she had a greater desire, probably for a longer time, and she has aligned her soul to receive being a New York Times bestseller. Whereas that doesn't mean I'm less of a person. It doesn't mean that I can't have or do not have the potential to be that or have that as well. But when we start comparing my life to her life, or your life to sister so-and-so, or your life to your sister, or your life to your brother, whoever it is, right? Anybody, any celebrity, whoever you want to compare yourself to is where you get in dangerous waters, okay? Because never, never, ever, 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 let me just drive that home to you, are you to compare your life with so-and-so's life. You might have a lot of things in direct connection with a particular person, like, oh, she has 4 kids. I have 4 kids. Oh, she likes this particular thing, and I like that particular thing. Oh, I'm a writer too, and she's a writer. She has red hair, and I have red hair, right? You still can't go by that because you don't know, I don't know what that lady has had since her intentions when she was in her mother's womb, or pre-mother's womb. You don't know what people came with, right? She is going to have different things and different desires than me, and I'm going to have different desires than her, but some might correlate as far as like us having the same things. Have you ever noticed why you get jealous of some people or envious? Because there's 2 different definitions. Have you ever watched my video on envy and jealousy? It's a really good one, but I wanted to talk to you about that. And I hope that made a little bit of sense, like in clarification for the law of attraction, because I don't want you guys ever to think, and I really express this on my blog post, is that you ever think that I'm ever trying to lead you to my side of thinking. I'm just wanting to give something as an example so that you might, maybe one little piece of information might help you clarify in your own life, like, I've always wondered about that particular thing, and maybe I touch on that. But that doesn't mean that I expect you to leave your religion or become a person that follows the law of attraction or anything of that nature. But if it resonates with you and it feels good, I think just like as with me, because I was afraid. I was quite frankly fearful because I thought if I start following the law of attraction, I'm going to burn in hell, or I'm never going to go to the celestial kingdom. If you're Mormon, you're never going to be eternal with God. And so there was a lot of fear-driven tactics in there in my belief systems with fearing God and you're going to be threshed. And so it's like I've completely changed my way of thinking. And it's just as simple as learning new beliefs, because once we understand something, or why we think the way we do, or why we have been raised a certain way, or what triggers us, or what causes us to be angry and upset or vengeful, or want to feel like we're unchristlike, if you're using a religious term, right? That it really has nothing to do with the things that oftentimes we have been trained from early childhood to believe that those are the cases. It's not. It's just that's the only belief that we know. So when you believe something, you think that it's so ingrained in you that it can never be changed. And when you start to realize like you have and hold all of the power, and God knows that you hold all of the power. And so when you can start to realize that and come into your own sense of personal power, that that's why these things resonate with you, because you have an understanding of it. And then it just starts to follow the flow of ease and how we're really supposed to live life. And things are supposed to be easy for us. And I know you're probably even thinking, some of my religious friends are probably thinking, yeah, well, it's easy for you to say. No, I'm not saying that with an easiness to it. I'm saying that with a very assured clarity that we have been taught in a misaligned state when we were young and conditioned to believe you got to work your ass off to get anything you want. And you better do this, and you better follow the commandments, and you better, and you better, and you better, and you better, or else you ain't getting crap. You know what I mean? Or you're going to have trials and tribulations, and you're going to be thrust to hell in the end because if you didn't make it, and da-da-da. And it's like, does that feel good when you think about that? It never felt good to me. And so I always would question that or examine those type of feelings. And I'm like, that's a contradiction to the way that I believe God is a loving God and Jesus is a loving sibling. You know, Jesus was our brother. If I was taught all of those things religiously, then why every time I think of that, and you're going to be thrust to hell or hell if you don't, it's like if you don't repent of your sins, because it's like, and the reason I say it so abruptly like that is because that's how you're taught. When you're Pentecostal, you're taught Pentecostal. It's not that way in Mormonism. But it is very much like you're going to follow this box or else you're going to feel the ramifications of being, cast aside in a sense, right? Or you're going to be deemed or labeled a certain, deviant. And I never understood that because it was like, why do I feel like shit every time someone says, well, you better repent, it's because you're not right with God? And it's like, that doesn't feel right to me. Like, why am I thinking like God is this horrible, wretched person, but then on the other end, he's supposed to love and embrace me and love me unconditionally? It didn't make a flipping bit of sense to me. Am I the only one here that's like, that freaking crap didn't resonate with me at all? And I never understood it. And it was frustrating because I'm like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So what's the freaking point? Because I don't get it. And I was always questioning and examining my religious background because I thought, okay, well, if I'm not Pentecostal, maybe it's the religion. Maybe it's because I didn't have the right, correct religion. I know I always quote things, but it didn't make sense. So I thought, okay, well, maybe this feels really good. This religion feels really good, And so I get into that religion, and then over the years, I'm starting to go, okay, these same things, it's obviously me, and it's obviously not the religion because I'm now been in two religions, one for 17 years, very, very strictly. And then I went from being Pentecostal Church of God to being Mormon until I was 44 years old. So mind you, not 44. I think it was when I stopped going to the Mormon church, I think I was 43. And I'm 47 now, so it hasn't been very long, I'm still technically probably on the records because I know the home teachers and stuff still come to my house. How they found somebody gave them my address or whatever. But anyway, the whole point is that these things never resonated. And even when I was in a different religion, it's still those things would trickle in and I didn't understand it, the authoritative thing. And I didn't understand why I still... it was like these rules that you had to follow. And I'm like, it didn't make sense to me. I was still following all the Mormon rules, going to the temple every Friday night, My husband never went with me, and I was like, okay, so I'm doing all these things. I'm doing the family home evenings. I'm doing the, let's have a spiritual thought every night. Let's, do family prayers and individual prayers, and let me study my scriptures for an hour every day. And I followed the rules. Let me pray and listen to the Spirit for 30 minutes. I was so set in stone with everything that I did. I didn't even drink caffeine. I never cussed. I was a very good girl. But I would notice that I wouldn't be able to go to the temple unless I removed my bangles because it was excessive. That's what the stake president told me. It was excessive that I wore bangles and couldn't go to the temple. But my husband, if he wanted to go, and I didn't know this until after, but I was like, so you're allowed to sit in the congregation and hold like a calling in the priesthood. You're allowed to pass the sacrament, and you're allowed to do all these things, cheat on your wife, be an alcoholic on the weekends and party with all your friends, be addicted to, Adderall and different, medications. And yet you can just go to the temple anytime you want. Just lie in the interview. That's all you have to do, basically, because that's what was happening. And I'm like, but I didn't lie, and I was getting the ramifications of it. It's like, why am I being held to a more higher standard, and I'm following the freaking rules? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the frustration. And I'm not frustrated now. I'm enthusiastic about it. But the things that made so much sense after I was able to take a step back and be out of a dysfunctional marriage because I had met this person when I was 14. You know what I'm saying? So many things started to play out, and I started to understand so many things. It's almost like the blinders came off, and I think that that's the only way for me to have manifested all my dreams and desires once I was out of that environment, because when you're in it, you can't see the forest for the trees. You honestly can't. And so, don't ever judge a woman that stayed with a spouse or a man that stayed with a woman, and it's like, well, they're in dysfunction, they deserve it. Not have that attitude, but just say, don't put too much thought into what other people are doing. Whoever is doing whatever they're doing, even if it's your parents, your siblings, and they have a dysfunctional marriage, or that things are going on because you've heard through the grapevine, or your town's real small and everybody knows everybody's business. It's really none of your freaking business what's going on with anybody. The only business you need to be tending to is your own freaking business, right? Even in a marriage, stop holding people to such high standards when they can't be the object of your attention 24/7. That's not their freaking job. They didn't come to earth to be your object of attention all the time. Oh, I just feel so sad when my husband doesn't give me attention and dote on me. That's your own problem. You need to start realizing, women, it's not a problem, but you need to start looking at yourself and stop directing. And I understand where it comes from. It comes from, what I'm saying, you guys, is it comes from when you've grown up in a religious background. Even if you didn't grow up in a religious background, you still are going to have certain conditional environmental circumstances that have shaped your destiny thus far, right? And so you have to unravel those things and start to learn and look inside yourself and understand. That is my whole thing with leaving a legacy for my son Sawyer, is that I want women to not to be bitchy about it, because this is all about supporting you, but I think also not letting you off the hook. I'm going to let you off the hook as far as knowing that you maybe not understand things, because I'm that way and I still don't understand everything, but just trying to give you a different viewpoint of something that has always been such a interesting topic to me, is that why the hell am I doing this? If I don't like it, why would I still be freaking doing it? You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm not supposed to, technically, like Mama said, or Pastor so-and-so said I'm not supposed to feel this way, so why do I still feel this way? And why am I made to feel that I'm bad or I'm a bad person because I feel this way? And that doesn't feel good, right? And so I just want you to understand where these belief systems arise from and they bubble up, because understanding is half the battle. Don't you agree? Understanding why we do what we do and unraveling the sense of this external perception that we have about ourselves and about other people compared to what internally is going on. And that is what the law of attraction is all about, is that it's internally. You might not be thinking that you're a complainer. You might not be thinking that you're very judgmental, because if you're not saying things or, oh, I don't gossip, but if you're thinking it, your energy is what is actually manifesting. Okay, so you think, oh, well, I think that lady so-and-so is a bitch and I hope I never see her. Or I don't like sister so-and-so in church and I think she's a hag and I don't like her, or everything she represents is she's a phony and a fake, right? Guess what you're going to manifest? the exact thing that you don't want to manifest, like saying coming in contact with that person you can't stand, having to deal with her, maybe you'll get thrown in a calling with her and you think, oh my God, this is a trial. That's how religious people look at it, like, oh, this is a trial, I got to deal with sister so-and-so and I can't stand her. Actually, what it is once again, you're projecting your energy, right? Something internally within you is going on as to why you think you have a disagreement or you don't like sister so-and-so that you've been thrown in a calling with, right? And that's for the Mormon people. Like, I think you'll understand, like, if I'm talking about that. You can use that scenario in anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I can't stand my husband's ex, right? Well, guess what? Every time you think about that, or every time that notion comes in, that energetic notion of, I can't stand that girl, I hope I never see her in my... Guess what? Guess who you're going to see at the local farmer's market? Guess who you're going to see randomly at the gas station? Your husband's ex. And that's just because it's energy. Everything you're thinking is energetically going out into the universe. You can say, oh no, well, I don't feel that way. But it's not what you feel. It's what you're thinking. And that's going to reflect every single time. Just let me give you an example. How many times I used to say, okay, this was when I lived in California. Prime example, you create your reality. And I know sometimes it's hard because you're like, I created that? I wouldn't create that because I don't like that. Why would I create that? Because you're thinking about it. That's why you create it. You might not want it or think you want it and you don't want it, right? I don't want to be robbed at the teller. Guess what you're going to be? You keep thinking about that, you're going to manifest being robbed at the teller. I'm just saying. So here's a prime example. It's a hard pill to swallow, I know, because you want to be able to say, that's not my fault. That's not my fault. That's their fault because they're the idiot, right? Nope. Prime example, okay? I'll give you two examples. One is when I lived in California. Now, I had forever had this irritation about wearing a flippin' seatbelt. Couldn't stand to wear a seatbelt, hated to wear it, felt confined, controlled. I didn't want the law telling me what to freaking do, and I never would wear my seatbelt. I loathed wearing my seatbelt. Now, the real reason that I didn't want to wear my seatbelt is because my ex used to stop the car, literally pull to the side of the road and say, you have to put your seatbelt on, like I was a child, right? He wouldn't drive the vehicle if we were going places or anything if I didn't wear my seatbelt. And I felt like he's trying to control me, and that infuriated me. So I was even more rebellious. Well, guess what would happen every time it happened literally within 3 months apart. I got pulled over probably about 7 times within 3 months for, you guessed it, not wearing a seatbelt. Do you think I got tickets? Absolutely, because then I was hostile about it. But guess what? The reason I manifested someone giving me a ticket and pulling me, how in the world, I used to think, how in the world did that cop see me? There's no way he could have seen me driving on the road like that, not wearing my seatbelt. Because guess what? Energetically, I was sending out these little energetic notions of, I hate my seatbelt, I'm not wearing my seatbelt. And guess what? There's cops around patrolling for people not wearing their seatbelt. It's all energy, you guys. So yeah, finally, when I met Jeffrey and we were together, he always wore a seatbelt. And I knew that I should wear my seatbelt just because it's the law. But I wanted to understand why I was so angry about wearing my seatbelt, which I uncovered was because the dominating reason was because I felt I was being controlled and told what to do. Like that was my daddy and you better mind me, like stopping the car down the interstate because I wouldn't wear my seatbelt, like controlling me. And of course you're going to be like rebel, right? Anytime you tell someone not to do something, they're going to do it and then take pictures. Let me just say, do it twice and then take pictures. You know what I mean? So when I met Jeffrey, obviously he used to drive people around because he was, in landscaping. And he always wore a seatbelt. He's a phenomenal driver. I mean, one of the best drivers I've ever seen. Never had a ticket. I mean, he's just such a good driver. And And so he was like, baby, you should probably wear your seatbelt. I think it's good for you. And that was all he ever said to me. And do you know that after he said that, when I first met him, I've worn my seatbelt and I have no problem. I got rid of all that energy and the reason that I didn't want to freaking wear the seatbelt. Isn't that amazing? And if you think of that with your life, or think of that with your children, or think about that with your husband or your parents or your siblings or somebody that you're not even getting along with, think about finding the best thing in that person to bring forward when you see them. And the only thing, if you're living on that energetic level, the only thing that can come of that is that that person will always bring the best of themselves to you because you're energetically aligned. You know how like in the scriptures, and if you're religious, how they say, oh, well, we're not equally yoked. Have you ever heard that term? Well, in the law of attraction, this is the exact same thing. Your energies aren't aligning, and so obviously the universe is going to disperse those energies if they're not aligned. So you're only going to come in contact with the people that you're energetically aligned with. So if I'm thinking that I'm this better person, but so-and-so is my roommate, and they're a psychopath, right? Obviously, you have some psychopathic nature, some energetic vibration going on there that you attracted your roommate, the psychopath. I know, sometimes people don't want to hear this. They're like, oh my God, Raquel's on a crazy bend. She's nuts. She's lost it. She's gone off the deep end. But I guarantee you, if you test this and you start questioning things like this in the universe, I would guarantee you with all sincerity, on my life, you will start to recognize and understand the laws of the universe, the universal laws, and they make such perfect sense. It will resonate with your soul, and you'll be like, yeah, that totally makes sense. I never thought of that like that. It's just an idea, okay? I wanted to talk to you guys about what's been going on and how I would love to take you along with me, how I would love to make videos for my YouTube channel and for my business, because now I've started to make a little bit of money off of my YouTube channel and off of my blog, which has been lovely and exciting. And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk to you guys about what's actually been going on since the last time that I shot a video. Okay, so what happened was, after my son Sawyer died, and I think I spoke to you guys a little bit about this in my blog post, about leaving a legacy and whatnot. And so I want to talk a little bit briefly about that and about the other things that are happening with Jeffrey and I, okay? So what happened was 5 years ago, and I explained this, and I'll put the link to my blog post if you want to read it. So it's, and then I'll have the video embedded as well, so you guys can watch it if you want to. But yeah, so basically what happened was, when I was really young, about 19 years old, and I explained this in the blog post, is that I had this desire to create, I wanted to help girls and women do this sort of thing, really create a life that they love. And so I started when my kids were younger. Sorry, my eye is itching like crazy. When my children were younger, especially like Sawyer that passed, was, people considered him a delinquent. I didn't, just because he was my son, and maybe I'm just a little bit, not as judgmental, but a lot of people on the external appearance, because he had tattoos and he listened to rap music and liked rap music that had cursing in it, and he liked to smoke weed and things of that nature. Now, mind you, a lot of times it's funny how parents can do those things in their childhood. Like, I know I think I had a wine cooler when I was in high school, and I never smoked cigarettes or anything like that, just because I was like, my mom created this vanity issue with me. It wasn't ever anything like, oh, I want to start smoking because I'm cool or something. I just always had this sense of spirit. And my mom even told me this just recently, that I had this sense of spirit that was very, very strong-willed and very much spiritual, even as a young girl. And I always saw the ramifications of things in the forward future. And I never said it was like because I was psychic or anything like that, because let alone I'm already being shunned because I'm a redhead and I've got freckles and fair skin and things of that nature, and I'm a nerd and I wear old-fashioned clothing, but that I could see things in the future and like know of things that would happen, right? And so I would always think, like, why would they do that? Like, if you smoke, do you realize, like, when you're 30 years old, you're going to have brown and yellow teeth and your fingernails are going to be disgusting? And, like, I didn't ever look at it like, oh, it's a vanity thing. And, ooh, if I started smoking, I'd be cool. Like, I never cared about crap like that. And so, and I was just like, why would you drink? Because then you lose all sense of power over yourself and control. And I like to have control of things. So that was probably why that played beneficial on my part. But anyway, the whole point is that Sawyer was considered a delinquent, and he was like kicked out of 3 or 4 schools, and they wanted to put him in alternative school and whatnot. And so I started recognizing, I started thinking, I'm going to homeschool him. Like, that seemed like the normal thing to do, especially being in the religions that I was in, that it made sense, because I wanted to teach my children about spiritual things, right? I wanted to teach them about the arts and things, and like even extracurricular things had been taken away. And I thought, I know Sawyer loves his music and such. And so I just started praying, because that's at the time I used to pray and everything. And instead of saying meditate, but I used to pray, and I was like, how can I don't want my kid to go to alternative school. And so I was already homeschooling Carter, my oldest son. And so I was like, Sawyer never wanted to be homeschooled originally. And because he was a very social child. And so he loved all his friends, and he didn't want to be taken away from them. And so I never wanted to be controlling like that. And I said, okay, well, that's fine. If you want to do that, you can be, but I'll homeschool the kids that want to be homeschooled. And so anyway, but then that changed once he was kicked out of 3 schools, and then they were going to put him in an alternative school. So I was like, no, that's not going to happen, because I felt like that's where they send children, that they're like, get them out of my hair, and this child is a lost cause, is what I felt like. That's the perception that I got, and it was probably an energy thing. That's what I received, because I was thinking that energetically. Now, I didn't know that at the time. It was a law of attraction thing, but that's just what spiritually I thought too, religiously. And I was like, no, because then he's going to become even more of a delinquent. And that's going to look like I don't care about him at all, and like, just get him out of my hair, and I don't want to deal with him. Because I knew that I always intuitively knew that my children, the way that they perceived life, had so much to do with the fact that how I saw my children. Like, we may not want to believe that, like, we don't have any reflection on the children, or, oh, well, the mother seemed to be a great person, but her kid was a nut job, right? No, that's not how it is. You can pretend, even if you're the one that's the person that has a child, and you're like, oh, that's the black sheep of the family, kind of thing, or whatever, which I never said that about Sawyer, but Sawyer felt that from other people. Let's just say that. I'll be very nice today. But I knew that my son, I felt, was a reflection of me being a stay-at-home mother and what I was teaching him spiritually. And so I never wanted for my son or any of my children to ever feel like that I disapproved of them, that I didn't love them unconditionally. Like, I'm going to love you when you're doing good and you're following my rules. But when you're naughty and you're showing your ass, you know what I mean? For sister so-and-so to see, and like, oh my God, look at her kids. Look at her kids. Her kid's a delinquent. Oh, he's not going on a mission because he can't pass the interview because has a porn problem that he needs to get over. Like, this is the kind of stuff that goes on culturally. And I know you guys know this. It happens everywhere. Let's just be honest. And so that was just a vague example. It wasn't my children, but I had heard that in church and stuff. And I was like, okay, so this doesn't have to just do with my child. There's a reason why Sawyer is feeling like an outcast. There's a reason why Sawyer's not feeling that he can succeed. So anyway, the whole point is I created a nonprofit organization called the English Settlement. Now, the English Settlement I thought was cool because I've always loved Victorian, you know me, old-fashioned stuff. That sounds very old-fashioned to me. And English was my name, my last name previous. And English is all of my children's name, right? And it's Sawyer's name. And so, settlement, I thought I wanted to create a place where girls and women, like I could have workshops, or you know how like you have all these speakers that travel around the world or whatever, but I thought, I want to have like an English settlement where people will come and like I want to give workshops about my law of attraction stuff and what I'm teaching, and you know how that they can therefore then take my ideas or whatever and do this with their families and create the life that they love. And most particularly women, because we have to get to the women first, girls that are my age and younger, because we're the ones raising the children. So if you have a crappy mentality as a mom, like I'm thinking, I didn't have a crappy mentality and I never thought like, I'm a piece of crap person. I had a lot of insecurities, but I always felt pretty confident, like, no, I could do this. Like, this is what I'm going to do, you know? And so I always thought, okay, well, we have to get to the mothers first and teach them and unravel all of the shit that they've got, right? Like when I was young, where I accumulated all of these different beliefs that weren't serving me, so that I can then therefore create that and inspire that within my children. Because listen, you can sit there and try to mask that shit all freaking day long and it ain't gonna work. You can like pretend and, you know, throw money at something to make that issue go away. You know, if you have money, right? You can, you know, send this kid off to boarding school. You could send that kid off to, you know, go live in, he could divorce his parents, or what do you call that? I don't know. But like, you can do all these things. Or they can discover, you know, start to become a heroin addict or cutting themselves, and then you just like dismiss them or shun them or kick them out of your lives and like, well, you know, I just can't have that negativity in my life. Yeah, well, you already created the nightmare and now you just want to fall it off on this society and think, well, I'm just done with that person. He doesn't fit in my square. I mean, what kind of parent? I mean, listen. I can sit there and judge you, and I'm not judging you. All I'm saying is, you know how many mothers I see do that and dads that I see that? And listen, I'm going to tell you, one of the main heated reasons that I get like this is because Sawyer was my one child that was treated this way from his father, okay? And you can say, oh, well, she's throwing him under the bus, her ex-husband, whatever. And yes, this is one of the main reasons. And the reason that I know this is because I spoke to my son like weekly. We talked in depth for hours, his entire life. And so I was always extremely close to Sawyer, my son that passed. It gets me, really, really. Hold on. So I'm very passionate about this. I'm very understanding that recognizing my responsibility in it as well. And so I'm very clear with saying that I take ownership for that. That I made choices then that were not conducive to my son's spiritual growth. And I don't blame myself. I don't even blame my ex for this, okay? I mean, maybe there is a little bit of blame. And blame feels better than guilt, right? So I'm still working through that process, and I will get through it. But this is the nature of emotions when you're going through the death of a child, or you're going through, you know, a divorce, or you're going through you know, just any kind of like life experience, you know, that's difficult for you. There's a process of these emotions that you go through on this scale. Anyway, so my whole point is that I created the English settlement because that's, you know, where people collectively were uninhabited, and they create like a little society. And so I thought that was a beautiful name. So I incorporated it. I got my business thing. I filed for the tax ID. All of that stuff expired because if you don't use it, it goes away. Like you have to resubmit papers. You have to you have to buy the name. You have to trademark the name. I mean, and that costs money, and things like that. And that's what I was telling you guys about since the truck dissolved and the truck was removed from my life, that I've put closure to that. And so the money that I got from the GoFundMe for my son Sawyer, I'm using that money to do all of these things for the English settlement. And I will be honest with you, because that was my previous married name, that I have had a real issue with it. And before Sawyer had passed, I was going to dissolve that completely and just not ever, re-up the website and not re-up all the different, renew the stuff, because I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But then I realized after Sawyer passed, I was like, this is how I'm going to leave his legacy. And what better way? That is his name. And I'm going to, and I thought, I just need to disassociate myself from feeling like, I'm going to think of it like the English countryside or whatever. Like, you can create your own reality with however you desire to make a belief, right? And so if you want to put fancy little words to something, or you want to make your house sound like a cottage, and you want to say cottage, oh, I live in Staffordshire Cottage, and that sounds much cuter than, a stucco Florida home from 1974, then do it. And who cares what people think about you? I'm so over people thinking certain things about. I could give 2 beep about what people think about me. And so anyway, the reason that I was saying that was I was getting on a little tangent about the English settlement. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to create this in my mind, that this is a beautiful thing. And this is a beautiful thing. And so when I started homeschooling Sawyer, and he went from F's, he wasn't going to even graduate, you guys. His grade point average was so low, and he was failing, he was stealing, he was, I was worried he was going to be picked up the next time for a felony. It was just bad. And so then he was smoking weed on the side with his friends and stuff, and it wasn't legal in Florida. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to keep him in my close quarters. And if I'm homeschooling him and I know what he is being subjected to, that I know that I can help this child, I feel, if I can just show understanding and love to him, and create in this person to kind of uplift him in the things that he is good at, which he was good at writing, and he was always really good at rapping and creating art and creating music, and he loved that. He thrived on it so much. So I thought, I'm going to create a curriculum completely based around what this kid loves. And so that's what I did. And so I talk about that in the blog post. For instance, he loved, instead of doing history, well, I had him study 3 of his favorite rap artists. I told him, you know what, I'm going to quiz you on, what do you know about this? Where was this kid born? What's his real name? How did he come up with Eminem? And why is that, why is he called that? And, what was his childhood like? And so it was actually, he was learning psychology, history, and everything, but he was learning about something that he was devouring. It wasn't hard for this kid to learn anything. And he graduated, no shit, with high honors. And he was a Boy Scout. He got his Eagle, which, do you know how hard that is to do for a child that's in Scouts his entire life? A lot of them don't become an Eagle Scout. And so, you get upped in the military when you sign up. If you're an Eagle, you go in as like a fourth, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like, instead of waiting to be like you're number 1 or something like that. You guys would know that's in the military. He was automatically put as a number 4 division or something, just because he was an Eagle, because they know wonderful that is. I mean, Sawyer literally could have lived off the land by himself with no money, no nothing, because he knew how to live. Like, he knew how to start a fire with sticks. He knew how to, he knew how to tie knots. He knew everything. He knew how to live off the land. And so, that's one of the reasons that I was never concerned. Like, I think I told you guys this before, is that I had to I had to kick him out of the house because he wasn't following the rules as far as like the law was after him. Not after him, but when you're in trouble with the law, so that you don't get a felony charge or you don't get this, like you get kind of put on, like, it's kind of like called probation, but that wasn't the word when he was a young kid. But it wasn't house arrest. He didn't have to wear like an anklet or anything, but he had to be in at a certain time. He had to do random drug tests and things of that nature. And that was one of the things that I said, if you can't pass a random drug test because it's illegal, that's the only reason I have an issue with it. I said, when you're 18, move somewhere like Colorado or something and you can smoke it and have it whatever you want. And that's fine, and it's not against the law. But you're looking at different things. You become a criminal when it's not, in my opinion, you're not really doing anything criminal, but that's the way society is right now. It's kind of like alcohol. It used to be bootlegged, you know what I mean? It was illegal then, and so now everybody's coming around to it. But anyway, the whole point is that that's why I was not really super concerned, because I knew I had raised Sawyer very well. Sawyer knew that I loved him so much. But he also knew that I was a no shit. I didn't take any shit. You know what I mean? Like, when I say something, I mean it, and that's what's going to happen. So you can say, oh, yeah, mom talks out of her ass all the time. No. Mommy don't. Mommy says something, you better listen up. You better listen good. Because that means that's what's going to happen, and all shit is going to break loose when it does. Because obviously when someone sticks to their guns and says what they mean, you learn very quickly to believe what they say. And so anyway, that was what happened. I had to kick him out, but I knew Sawyer would be fine. And I had to come to that terms of knowing, like, if he was found, and this is horrible even after this to say this, some people might think this, but I don't, just because I don't have any emotions attached to it. But I remember saying, if you wind up in a ditch somewhere because I've kicked you out of the house and you have nowhere to go, or you become a heroin addict, or you become a drug addict and you can't live and face life, that's not on me. That's on you. Because I told you what the jig was up. You know what I mean? You got to follow these rules until you're 18, and then you can do whatever the hell you want. But because now you've brought me into it, and I have to drug test you randomly and you don't pass, and then that's going to become an issue with me because you're still under the age of 18. So the law could then do things to me. Do you see what I'm saying? So in the end, you're always going to watch your own ass. Is that not true? So yeah, so that's what happened. Sawyer ended up having to leave. He was homeless for 2 weeks. He just walked the street, but he still contacted me. He knew I loved him dearly. And I said, no, until you get your shit straight, you're going to follow the rules. If I'm going to have to drug test you, you're going to have to figure shit out, and you better do it real quick like. And so anyway, so I got rid of every single possession that he owned. When I kicked him out that day, I said, you know what? You failed the freaking test. He didn't actually literally fail the test, but when I went to go random drug test him, he was at the pool and everything because he had to be in by 6, that he gave me a fit and started cursing at me and saying mean things, right? So that gave me the indication that he didn't want me to do it, so that he knew he was going to fail. So I basically took that as, you're going to fail it, so you're out on your ass is what you are, And Sawyer never questioned the fact that I loved him so much. And he's like, Mom, that was the best thing you ever did for me. It was hard at first, and I was really pissed at you for a couple of days because he didn't have literally any friends to go stay with. He roamed the streets because, you'll loiter and they'll pick you up. So he would sleep. He told me this after, but he would sleep on like church steps during the day because he knew he felt safe there, and that people were very nice. Usually they were spiritual people, and they were, kept the light on at the parsonage and stuff like that. And so he felt safe there because, after a certain amount of time he would just have to keep walking. He said he probably walked, probably 20 something miles a day because he had to keep moving. And, he'd stay at McDonald's and get Wi-Fi or whatever because he had like an iPhone, but it didn't have any service or anything. So I think you could, there's certain things you could do on the phone if you had internet service or something. I don't know. We didn't pay for a service, but it was an old phone he had found, or a friend gave it to him or something. I can't remember. But that's the way I think he communicated with people and stuff. But anyway, so the whole point is that I homeschooled him. He graduated high honors. And I knew that I was onto something when this child went from F's and not going to graduate to become high honors, like A+, high honors. And I thought, if this worked for him, wouldn't that work for little girls? Like, what if I did a whole curriculum around mermaids, right? And for women, what if I did the mermaid too? Because isn't there a mermaid in every one of us? Is how I view it, right? And so I created a curriculum for mermaids, an entire curriculum. And now, mind you, the curriculum that I would teach women, that I'm going to teach women, is pretty much like what I'm doing now, in the four human dimensions. And it's based off of a lot of Stephen Covey concepts. You know what I mean? Like there's 4 divisions of a human. And a lot of times, mind, body, spirit, people forget that 4th dimension. And so anyway, so I've based teaching women and even teaching girls and kids too. But my main focus right now to continue Sawyer's legacy is that I need to focus on the women, because we need to have women that are very spiritually in tune, that love themselves, are creating a life that they love before they can actually then therefore have the strength and internal personal power to maybe change their life. Maybe you're going to go through these different transformations that's like, oh, maybe I don't need to leave this marriage, but maybe I need to work in this particular area, this particular human dimension. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're all working and trying to balance our lives. And so whereas some areas we're really good at, some areas we might struggle with a little bit more. So I want to solely focus on those 4 dimensions so that it's an equal, balanced thing. And when you're equally balanced, everything works beautifully in your life. It just does. And so that is what I'm doing for Sawyer's legacy, is the English settlement. So I reinstated that. Like I said, I'm using all the funds from the GoFundMe to do all of this stuff to reinstate this nonprofit organization. And I wanted it to be registered, a 501c3, so that I can eventually get, like a endowment. Is it an endowment fund where I want to be able to eventually get a lot of property, and I spoke about this on the blog post, and I want to be able to build little cottages, little thatched roofed cottages, and have these particular workshops in all these little different cottages. And the property, our forever home will be on this same property, but it'll be so spread out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to have a workshop every week. It's not going to be somewhere that somebody comes and lives. It's not any of that kind of stuff. It's not like a, home for, unfortunates or anything like that. It's going to be this beautiful experience every time that you come to the English settlement. But it's going to be all very Victorian and Victorian cottage, and all of the little buildings will have their certain names. There'll be the certain, like Staffordshire Cottage, and then there'll be this, and then there'll be that. And I think that it will be a beautiful place to leave a legacy, and that this will be me leaving Sawyer's legacy. But I would hope that that it will go to the state or whatever eventually, like when I pass, to continue to carry on this. Is that I think it's so, it makes me cry because it makes me so excited. And I am so putting out into the universe that someone with extreme abundance, because this is something so big that it's going to take philanthropic investors or somebody that is willing to help me foresee this big dream, right? Because unless I won the lottery, I mean, I guess, the universe can make anything happen. And so I fully believe, like, that's the reason that I want to be a New York Times bestseller. I want to get a big book deal for all my little children's books because, like I said, I have like 14 or 15 of them in the works. Plus, I have the other ones, the two autobiographies, and then I've got that other, the period drama one. And I want to be able to have a book deal so that I can be signed and bring forth. This would be another way for me to have the funds and the financial means to be able to carry this legacy out. And so if you meditate or whatever and you guys feel inclined, I don't want to say please do it, or beg you, but to put out to the universe, that this particular person, whoever it is, or this organization, I don't know, but to be able to find our forever home. I would love it to be in Florida just because I grew up here. Sawyer loved Florida, and I would just love to be able to find, if I could find a couple of 100 acres would be cool, but I think it would be fine if I started with maybe 40. Like, I don't think it would be, I just want to live in the country. Me, I've dreamed about it so much and whatever. And so that brings me to Jeffrey losing his job. He had worked at the job, I think 32 years, and since he was 17, and he's almost 50. So that tells you that was his only job ever. And so it was basically a blessing in disguise for him to lose his job. And that sounds maybe like, wow, I have had a doozy of some things happen, within the past couple of years, but beautiful things have happened too, And so it was just, it felt right for us to then therefore put the house up for sale and to look, and hopefully we can, squirrel away the money that we'll make as a profit off of the house selling because it's in a good neighborhood, the market value's up, and we'll do very well. Now, we won't do well enough to buy, 40 plus acres because I would really love to do it, cash. Like, I don't want to have a mortgage, and I don't want to have, like, I'm just more concerned right now about finding the property. So like, do you know land investors? Like, a land developer or something like that. Like, I just want somebody, like, that would be so dreamy, would it not? And like, I don't even know where we're going to live. Like, I honestly have no idea. We're going by this so much. Like, today, the realtor comes to put the house on the market and put the lockbox on the house. And so everything's transpiring so quickly. So Jeffrey and I felt that it was the right thing to do to put the house up for sale and move back to Brooksville, which is our forever home. We've always wanted to live there and have, a bunch of land and have a homestead and have sheep and our chickens and gardens and grow our things. And I would love to have a little mercantile, like the mercantile, you know what I mean? Like like it's a play on words. And the English settlement, and like the mercantile will have all my little storybooks and tea sets and teas. And Jeffrey has like, he has seeds and stuff that from little plants and everything. And I just think it would be like, how fun! How fun would that be? I just sound so dreamy. I'm so excited. And I like talk to Sawyer, and I'm like, Sawyer, because Sawyer has been so implemental in this, like, you guys know I have this scarf on, and yes, I'm covering up my nightgown because I didn't want to get dressed. I wanted to get this video out because I promised you guys. Anyway, so just bear with me, will you? So I'm really excited about all that. I will start to show you guys the beautiful properties and things like that when we start to look, because just for fun we're going to look, and we just love doing that anyway. And it's been so wonderful because Jeffrey will be able to sit back for a moment, and decide what he wants to do and live his dream, because this is my dream. I'm living my dream right now, and I have been, working from home and painting and selling my little, original Little Women and Little Mermaidlings. And I just feel like I am so blessed and so appreciative of everything. And darn it, I didn't know my son was going to have to pass. But I feel his presence. I feel his presence ever so much with everything that's happening, and I know he is right there along with me and just cheering me on, like, Mommy, I'm gonna help you with this, and Mommy, I'm gonna help you with this, and look, I have an advantage because I'm pure positive energy now. And so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm super happy and joyful in that. And so I'm excited for you guys to come along with me as well. And I'm crying, I'm sorry. But I just want you to know, thank you so much for the care packages. Thank you for the GoFundMe amounts. It's been so rewarding for me to be able to, send away a check so that I can buy this sign, or pay for the tax ID and to file the, all of the different proclamations and stuff like that. And I'm just so appreciative, and thank you so much for being so kind to me and feeling such love. Thank you. I can't tell you enough how thankful I am. And so I'll leave it at that, because I'll just start bawling. And I might bawl after this video, but I'm going to maintain myself for a minute. And so anyway, I hope that you guys have a lovely day. I know I've kept you for like almost 2 hours. And I'll leave the links for the blog post. And if you want to just stop over, because I'm not as much, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but not very much. I try to keep it going, but I just love my blog so much more. And so I just love my blog so much more. So that's where I focus my main there and here. So if you would like to follow along with me, if that's great. And also, I hope this served you. And as always, I'm most affably yours till my next swim. Ciao.